Are you ready to make a fabulous and functional apron? This basic silhouette is extra with the ruffle and the bow, and it turns out fantastic every time. All you need to do is go to bellebyjessi.com to download the pattern. That's Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi. bellebyjessi.com. Download your pattern there, get some fabric, some ribbon, meet me back here and let's sew this together. All right, I've got my fabric, my scissors, my tape, and I've printed out my pattern pieces to make the women's apron. Before I show you the pattern pieces, I'm going to show you real quick what we're doing first. So this was printed on some scrap paper, so you may be able to see some of the lines through it. But this is our women's apron pattern piece. Obviously, it's too big to print on your printer, so what I've done is just split it into smaller pieces so that it will fit on your home printer. So this stack of paper right here is all of the women's apron pattern pieces. I'll show you how we're going to put that together. These other papers I can put aside for right now. This is our yardage amount we need and a little note about how I do my fabric layout. So I'll show you that momentarily. This is a picture of how I'm going to do the fabric layout. I'll show you that also. Our sewing instructions we don't need just yet, so we can put all this to the side for now. We're going to get our paper scissors, excuse me, and our pattern pieces. The apron pocket's pretty self-explanatory. It's only one piece. I'm only going to put one pocket on my apron. I do have a placement, a very faint placement on the body pattern. However, I have found that people are very particular about how they like their pockets, so you're going to place it wherever you like it. Or if you want to, instead of just cutting one, feel free to cut two and you can put them side by side on your apron body. Let's see. And our ruffle is just split in half again so that it will fit on the pattern piece. So this one you're just going to cut and then tape the pieces together. All right, let me make one more comment before we start cutting. So you can see that you've got dotted lines, dashed lines, and then you have shapes. So what you're going to do is just find, this one's pretty easy, the shapes that match each other, the dashed line's going to match, and you're going to tape these two pieces together. Something I like to do is trim right on the dashed line on one piece, leave a little bit of that white paper on the other piece so that I have something to tape to. But otherwise, this is sort of just like a puzzle, so you can figure it out. We're going to do this together. I'm going to start cutting and taping my pattern pieces to make my women's apron body. All right, I have all my pattern pieces trimmed out and ready to cut from my fabric. I did give you a grain line on every pattern piece. Don't stress yourself out about those. I'm going to show you the way I like to lay the pattern pieces out to make the best use of the fabric. So I'm going to move my paper scissors, my paper scraps out of my way here. Get my tape out of the way so that I can lay out my fabric. Whew, this table's a little small. All right, let's see. I don't need my ribbon yet. So I used to work in production. My background is all in production. I have worked in a sample room and even in a factory. And one of the things that we stress at the production level is to minimize fabric waste. So a lot of times when we create a fold and we're cutting 2 layers or something on the fold, we take our selvages, match the selvages up together, so then we have a fold on the opposite side, and we have a tendency to go ahead and throw our pattern piece right there and cut it out. That's fine. It works. You've got your pattern piece on the fold, but then you've created 2 separate remnants that are a little bit smaller, which is fine again. But what I like to do that's a little bit more efficient is fold my fabric not exactly in half, but fold it over far enough to get my pattern piece on the fold. And then I'll have one much larger remnant to work with that I can maybe use for something else. So that's the way I'm going to cut mine out, and I'll show you how I do it. On my men's, I forgot to leave enough space to get my pocket from this little corner. You can do that here. Let me say real quick too, with your ruffle, this is a flounced ruffle, so you can see that it's curved. When it's sewn, it's going to be straight, which creates that pretty little ruffle. So if you have a directional print, it's going to be a little bit distorted on these edges. I do not stress if you don't have a directional print, like I don't. Mine can go any direction. I don't stress about the grain line on the ruffle. It's sewn on a curve, so it doesn't matter if it's a little bit skewed unless your print matters. So if you have a print that's going up and down, ignore this grain line. You can use that line where you've taped them together and stack your ruffles up this way so that the print will be going the same direction as the body. Otherwise, a very efficient way to cut the ruffle is to snuggle it right here in this little armhole mark. So what I'm going to do is try to fold this a little bit closer, but still leave myself room to fit that ruffle in there. All right, I think I can come even a little bit. I'm going to measure this in a minute. I'll show you how to make sure that I'm straight, that I'm not folding it crooked. All right, so that's pretty good. So with it folded roughly like this, I'll be able to get my body on the fold, so I get my left and right symmetrical sides of my apron. I'll be able to get 2 of my ruffles. I'm not worried that it's a little bit off grain. And then in this extra piece, I'm gonna get 1 pocket and 1 ruffle. And I'll still have a little bit of remnant left. I can do something else. All right, so let me move my pattern pieces real quick. I've got enough here. I'm going to get my tape measure though, and I'm going to measure from the selvage to the fold a few times and make sure that my selvage is parallel to the fold so that I've got it as straight as can be. All right, so I'm at about 15 5/8 right here. I'm going to check that a couple other places. Pretty good. All right. Let me smooth it out. I'm going to check it one more time before I cut it. So I'm just trying to make a parallel line from my selvage to my fold. All right, I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to take my pattern piece. My fold is this straight line here. I've got my markings there. So I'm going to line the edge of that pattern piece right up with the fold of the fabric. And of course you can pin it like I'm sure you're used to doing when you cut your fabric. Another little trick that saves some time that we use in production is to put a weight on top of the pattern to hold it still rather than doing all the pins. They do sell pattern weights. One of my favorite things to use is an old iron. It's got a handle, it's nice and heavy, it's got a flat bottom, works great. The only thing you need to check and make sure is that the bottom is smooth so that it doesn't tear your paper or snag your fabric. So I've got 2 of those I'm going to set on top of my paper right here. Make sure real quick, yep, still got plenty of space for that ruffle in there. So I've got my paperweights on my body. I'm going to go ahead and trim this piece out first. Down here on the bottom, I do have 1 notch. My notch is a T-shape. You may have seen a V-shaped one before. Same thing, it's just a different way to mark it on your pattern. So I'm going to snip that. That's the line up for my ruffle seam. All right, so I've got my body cut out. Let me move it out of the way. I need 3, but I'm going to get 2 of my ruffles right here. Same thing, you can pin it or you can use the paperweight. You are going to have to move the paperweight when you do this because it's a little bit bigger than the pattern. That's fine. I don't mind doing that. If you don't like that, go ahead and pin it. Let's cut out 2 of these. All right, so I need 1 pocket because I'm only putting 1 pocket on my apron, and I need 1 more ruffle. So I've got this big piece of fabric left to cut both of those out of. And I'm going to tell you one more little trick I like to use. So again, I'm not going to be stressed about this being on the grain line. My fabric has no direction at all, so it doesn't matter how the pattern falls onto the pattern pieces. But now that I've got some of these cut out, it's a lot easier to cut from another piece of fabric. It doesn't move around at all. So I'm going to use one of my ruffles I've already cut as my next pattern piece. And then I've got my pocket here. So let's see how I want to line this up. I'm going to snuggle this right around where I've cut before. Looks good to me. So I'm going to leave that right there. I'm not going to pin it or anything. I'm going to get my pocket. I'm just going to eyeball it because I'm not stressed about that grain line, but I can see the warp and weft of the fabric. So I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to put my pattern weight on that. I'm going to trim these 2 pieces out, and then we'll be ready to put it together. All right, so I've still got a decent little piece of remnant here. I'm gonna save that and use that for another project, but let's move it out of the way. I've got my pocket, my ruffles, and my apron body. So we're ready to take these pieces with our ribbon over to the sewing machine and put it together. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is prepare our pocket and our ruffles. So let's move some of this stuff off to the side. All right, so for our pocket, if you have a serger, that's the easiest thing. We want to finish all these edges so that they're not going to ravel on our finished apron. So if you have a serger, you're going to serge all 4 edges. If not, you're going to get your pinking shears, and that's what I'm going to use. And you're just going to pink all 4 edges before we hem the pocket. All right, so on our pocket, we are now going to fold one side down. I've got it right side up, and we're going to fold one side in on itself to be the hem of the pocket. About 1 inch. If you want to eyeball it, that's fine. If you want to get a little ruler or a hem gauge to measure, that's fine too. So we're going to fold it over about 1 inch. And then we're going to stitch this side, this little side seam right here at about 1/2 inch in. Back stitch at the top and bottom. My sewing machine is different. I have an industrial machine, and this model does not have a reverse or a back stitch. So you'll see me, instead of back stitch, I sort of have to use the hand wheel to back up and stitch over the same spot again. Just wanted to point out that that's a little different on my machine than what you're sewing on. All right, we're gonna clip that corner and then do the same thing on the other side. So fold it in about 1 inch, 1/2 inch seam allowance, back stitch at both ends. All right, let's clip this corner, trim those threads. We're gonna fold that hem right side out. And then let's press out those corners, poke out those corners. Yes, I always use my scissors. I know some people think that's a big no-no. That's what I've always done. I've never had a problem with it. So that's what I'm gonna use. All right, my corners look nice and flat. Now we're gonna stitch across the hem or the serge, the zigzag edge or the serge. We're gonna hem across it, back stitch at both ends. We're gonna do this before we press it. All right, in just a minute, we're gonna take this to the ironing board and we're gonna press that hem, and we're also gonna fold in both sides at about that 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then we're gonna fold the bottom up as well. We'll press all that so we can stitch it onto our apron, but let's also get our ruffle ready. So we have a 3-piece ruffle. If it matters, you can look at all of them, see if one of them's prettier than the others that you want to be in the center. Mine all look pretty similar, so it doesn't really matter. We're gonna take 2 of them, right sides together, and we're gonna stitch the seam on the side, so about a 1/2 inch seam allowance again. Top stitch at the top and the bottom. Add that 3rd ruffle in, same thing, we've got right sides together. Our seam allowance is about a 1/2 inch, and we're gonna back stitch at both ends. Now the inside of this ruffle is going to be exposed on the final apron. So same thing with these raw edges. If you have a serger, you want to serge these 2 seams, the seam allowances. If not, you're going to get those pinking shears again, and we're just going to trim that, and it will lessen any raveling. Let's do that on both seams. All right, let's take this to the ironing board for your ruffle. You're gonna press your seams flat to the center, just like so. Or if you have pinked them like this and they're not serged together, you can press them open flat if you like that better. So you're gonna press these seams, and we're gonna press our pocket. We're ready to attach our pocket to our apron. You do have markings on your pattern. I like to do it in real life and see how it looks. So I've got it, let's see if you can tell. So here's the bottom of the apron. Here's the armhole right here. So I like mine up a little bit higher on the apron, so it's a little bit closer to the bottom of the armhole. And I've got it centered. You put yours where you like it, if you want it down a little bit lower, or if you've cut 2 pockets and you want to, put your pockets wherever you prefer them to be. And then we're gonna pin diagonally, stick the pins in diagonally on each corner to hold it still while we stitch it in place. All right, we're gonna stitch this pocket with reinforcements at the corner, so it's gonna be a little triangle at each corner. Let me show you. So we're gonna start on the right side. We're gonna stitch down to about where that stitching for the pocket hem is. Then we're going to angle across so that we're just a few stitches out from the edge, but angle across for the outside leg of the triangle, come back across the top, and then we'll stitch the rest of the pocket and do the same thing on the other corner. So I'm going to start on the side. I'm going to stitch down. I am going to go ahead and back stitch here. I'm going to come down to the hem stitching, put my needle in and pivot. Let's see if I can do this without knocking everything off the table. All right, and then I only need to be a few stitches in here. So I'm going to aim for just about a few stitches in, maybe about 3/8 of an inch to make that outside leg of the triangle. When I get to that top fold, I'm going to put the needle in and pivot again. Stitch across that top fold. Pivot, and now I'm going to come all the way down this side of the pocket. Edge stitch as close to that folded edge as I can. Pivot, edge stitch the bottom. I'm going to come up this last side and then make the triangle over here. So now I'm going to come all the way up to that top folded edge of the pocket, put my needle in. I only need to stitch out a few stitches, just 3 or 4 stitches. I'm going to pivot, and now I'm aiming back for this corner where the stitching for the pocket hem is. And I'm going to go ahead and back stitch right here. Awesome, our pocket's attached. All right, let's trim those threads and take out the pins. All right, the next thing we want to do is hem our armhole. So our armhole on each side, we're going to give a narrow rolled hem. So I'm going to flip it over. So I've got it upside down. I'm going to start at the top. You can do this with an attachment. If you have an attachment you like to use that makes a rolled hem, that's awesome. I do better with just my fingers. I've learned how to roll it with my fingers, so that's how I'm going to stitch it. So if you need to do it just with your hands like I'm doing it, we're going to take this top edge, we're going to fold it in just a little bit, 1/4 of an inch or even a little bit less, and then fold it again. So you'll see it's kind of rolled up on itself, so that raw edge is all the way inside. It's going to be a nice, narrow, clean finished hem on the outside. So let me do that one more time. So you're going to fold it in just a little bit and then fold it in again. All right, I'm going to put it under the machine, back stitch here, and I'm going to stitch as close to that little folded edge as I can. On this curved armhole, it's usually pretty easy actually to get it lay flat. That curve sort of helps with that. But we're going to stitch the whole armhole and back stitch at the bottom. Looks beautiful. We're going to do the same thing to the other armhole. Oh, I've somehow looped my thread up. Okay, there we go. All right, same thing here. So we're going to take that edge of that fabric, fold it in a little bit, fold it over again, or put it through your attachment. All right, now we're ready to hem the top, and also we're going to stick our neck ribbons in at the same time. So I'm going to turn it upside down again. Excuse me, we're going to do that same little narrow rolled hem, but we're going to put in our neck ribbons. So let's cut them. 23 inches is a really nice length. So I'm going to measure 23 inches. I'm going to fold it and just give it a little pinch to make a little finger fold there. And then I'm going to cut diagonally across that fold. And now I've already got my angled edges to help my ribbons to not ravel too much either. So I'm going to line this up. and cut 2 that are just the same length. All right, let me put one of these in my lap so I don't lose it. All right, on the first one, I want to get the flat edge, and I'm going to insert it into that hem. So I'm going to do the same thing I did on the armhole. I'm going to fold it over just a little bit. Now I'm going to kiss that ribbon and that raw edge together, and when I fold it over again, now the ribbon is inside that little hem. All right, so we can encase it in there while we stitch. I'm going to back stitch and then go almost all the way to the other side. All right, I'm going to stop before I get all the way to the end so I can put my other ribbon in here. Now on this side, I've already got some held up under the machine, so what I like to do is just go ahead and roll it over and finger press it so it sort of stays in place enough. I can take my ribbon and just slide it inside there. And now I'm going to stitch all the way to the edge and back stitch with my ribbon inside the hem. All right, now last finishing touch on this neckline. The ribbons, when stitched in like this, kind of want to lay down inside the apron. So we're just going to fold them up and turn it to the right side. And we're going to edge stitch, top stitch, just right here where the ribbon is to hold the ribbon up. I'm going to stitch all the way across, and then I'm going to pivot and come back across so it's double stitched all the way across that ribbon. It's nice and secure, and then I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to do the same thing to the other ribbon. All right, and our neckline is done for now. Let's get our ruffle. We're going to attach our ruffle to the bottom of our apron. All right, so let's see. We've got our little notches. Those are to line up the seam. So let's stick a few pins in here. All right, so this pattern is made where they match, excuse me, at the stitch line, which is about 1/2 inch. So you're gonna work it in there a little bit as you go across. Don't stress yourself out, but your ruffle is gonna fit snugly exactly across instead of having some extra that you have to ease in. So I'm gonna back stitch at each end and then just go all the way across. All right, now just like our ruffle seam allowances attaching the ruffles together, the ruffles attaching to the body are going to be exposed inside the finished apron, so we need to do something to make sure that they're not going to ravel. Again, if you have a serger, that's the easiest thing. If not, let's get those pinking shears back out. We're going to pink this seam all the way across, and then we're also going to do the bottom edge of the ruffle. So either serge or pink both of those areas. All right, so we've got our ruffle seam pinked or serged so that we don't have to worry about it. We're gonna get our ribbon and we're going to hem down the sides and add in our ribbon. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip this upside down. So I'm ready to stitch this edge. Get my ribbon. All right, we're cutting our waist ribbons at 47 inches. So I'm gonna do that same little trick I did on the neck ribbons. I'm gonna measure. So let's see, I'm gonna go 30, add that to 17. Then I'm gonna fold it and pinch it right there. Make me a little fold. And I'm gonna cut diagonally across it so that I've already got my angled cut for the end of my waist ribbons. I'm gonna put these together and make them the same length. I'm gonna save this extra little bit for my bow. Let me put one of these in my lap so I don't lose it. All right, we're gonna do this just exactly like we did the neck. So here at the bottom of my armhole, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna fold for that little narrow rolled hem. I'm gonna fold it once. I'm gonna put that ribbon right up against it, fold the fabric again so that it's over top of the ribbon. So again, the ribbon is getting enclosed inside this little narrow rolled hem. All right, I'm gonna top stitch and then stitch all the way to the bottom. We're stitching right over top of that seam for the ruffle as well. All right, and just like on the neck ribbon, it wants to go inside the body when we stitch it like that. So we're gonna fold it out, flip the apron to the right side, and top stitch right on the edge where that ribbon is. I'm gonna pivot, stitch back across it again, and then back stitch. All right, on the other side, I'm gonna have to start down at the ruffle first, which is fine. It's exactly the same thing. You're gonna roll it over again. We don't have any ribbon down here at the bottom at the ruffle, so we can go ahead and back stitch, work our way up to the top, and we're gonna stop just before we get to the top so we can insert that ribbon. We're gonna stop just before we get to that top armhole edge of this side. Now, just like the neckline, on this side, we've got some of it already underneath the machine, so it's sort of being held in place. I like to go ahead and finger press and get that hem ready to stitch, and then I can take the ribbon and just slide it up under where it's folded over. So I'm sticking the ribbon in there, and now I'm going to finish stitching all the way to the end and back stitch. Let's fold that ribbon out, top stitch. All right, your apron is actually finished. You can stop right here. It is a fabulous and functional apron that's ready to use. But if you want that little something extra with the bow, we're gonna take that last piece of ribbon. We're gonna tie it into a bow first and then tack it onto our apron. So let's see how many tries it takes me to get my ribbon, to get my bow nice and pretty out of this ribbon. So I'm gonna loop it over and make my bow. I always end up lopsided to start, so let me try again. All right, 2 tries, that's not too bad. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this bow. I'm gonna stitch mine in white so that you can see where I'm stitching. If your ribbon is a dramatically different color than your thread, like mine is here, I do recommend switching your thread to match your ribbon. We're going to try to hide the stitches, but they will probably show just a little bit. So what we're going to do first, let me see if I can get something to point with. Let's see, I'll use this pencil. So what we're going to do is take our bow. We're going to place it where we want it, but then what we're going to do is actually lift this little knot up on the side, and we're going to stitch under it. So we're going to push it out of the way and stitch right up under it, so that then that knot is actually going to cover our stitches. And it works easier on one side of the knot than the other. All right, let's see how well I can cover this white thread. And you just need to do a tack, which is basically just a few stitches and then back again, or a few stitches and then go over those stitches again in the same direction like I have to do. I'm gonna do it one more time. All right, let me trim all this and see how I did. All right, so let's see if I can get this where you can see it. So my bow is on here. It is attached, and my stitches are underneath this little knot here. So if I had changed my thread to where it matched, you wouldn't really see it at all. You can leave it like that. It does flop just a teeny bit, so I actually like to do it on both sides of the knot. This is the easier side of my knot. This side is a little bit smaller, but I'm going to see if I can slide this side of the knot over and get just a few stitches on this side as well. All right, so I only did a couple over here, but I have a few little stitches inside the knot on this side as well, just so that bow is on there very securely. It's gonna stay put, it can get washed, you don't have to worry about it. The very last thing is we don't want these flat edges of our ribbon to start raveling away and make our bow look not so pretty. So you can cut them at an angle, just like we did for the ends of our neckline ribbons, or if you want to do that pretty little folded bow cut, let's see if we can do that. You're going to fold it in half and snip it at an angle so it makes that little cute little V shape. Ah! There we go. So you can make it as short or as long as you want, but you do want to try to get the two edges sort of even. So let's see, it came about as long as my loop. All right, there we go. Our apron is adorable. It is finished and ready to enjoy. I had so much fun sewing this fabulous apron with you. I hope you enjoyed it too. Please join me for some other sewing videos, or for those times when you're just too busy to DIY, check out my shop for lots of handcrafted items that are ready to ship out right away from my home to yours. You can find me here, there, and everywhere online at Belle by Jessi. There's an extra E on the Belle, not on the Jessi. And let's sew again together soon.
And also like and subscribe. Yeah, so like and subscribe.
Thanks, boys.